Hey guys, Ashley here. Check out this awesome podcast called Broadcast from the Belfry. They talk about everything you could ever want, including cryptids, true crime, and something that they call fake and medium crime. So check them out.
Hey there, guys and ghouls.
You should tune in to Broadcast from the Belfry, a dark-humored and pop culture-filled podcast for the morbidly curious.
We cover literally everything from cryptids
To ghosties,
to true crime, false crime, and the medium crime, which we're still trying to find.
folklore,
Not the Taylor Swift album, but I have talked about it, and we've got plenty of other tangents and pop culture thrown in between.
what are your top 3 things we've covered in our first 50 episodes?
I like it when nice gay couples have a chicken coop and nothing bad happens ever in the world that I live in. I like when there's Squonk, because he's me, and I like knowing what happens if I have to go number 2 on a boat in the ye old times.
I put that as mine too, the Kraken, and I have in parentheses poop decks.
Nice.
Also, mummies. I love talking about mummies. And the Birkenhair Anatomy murders, also in parentheses, skin books. I know that was not in your top 3. That's probably in your bottom 3.
It definitely is. If you guys want to hear everything we said above, hear me groan when Georgia grosses me out, which happens a lot, and hear some real fun facts, I hope you tune in. And Georgia, what do we say to the potential listeners?
Stay spooky.
This is Histories and Mysteries. I'm your host, Ashley, and this is
Jessica, and on this week's episode, Ashley is going to be talking about the Danvers State Hospital. There we go. In Massachusetts. And I'm going to be talking about the Rockwood Asylum in Kingston, Ontario.
Woohoo! And so I would like to first and foremost apologize if you hear my child. My husband is working, so I am stuck with him, and today he woke up and chose violence. So he's been pretty cranky. If you hear him, I apologize.
Yeah, I might have to grab my child at some point, but I'm really, really, really hoping that she's just going to be okay.
So last week's episode, real quick off topic, I was talking about how I was a Scorpio and I didn't feel like I really fit the Scorpio mold, and one of our listeners said that I should look up my moon sign or whatever. I know very little about all this crap.
Yes, thank you, Rochelle.
yeah, it was Rochelle. And so she told me to look up my moon thingy, and apparently someone said that your sun sign is who people see you as, and your moon sign is how you see yourself.
Yeah, so Rochelle explained it to me.
Oh, perfect. Let me know what she said.
Yeah, so she said your sun's sign is you as a whole. It's kind of the essence of you.
Okay.
Your moon sign is how you process emotions. It's the internal you. And then your rising sign is how the world initially sees you. It's your outer self, or how you are perceived initially by others. And your MC is the sign or constellation that was in the exact middle of the sky when you were born, and that represents your career/life path, or what you will do with your life.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, I found out that I am a Taurus moon sign.
Ooh.
I don't know anything about that. I was gonna look it up and then I just didn't.
Yeah, me too. I didn't look up any of mine.
But I want to see really quick what my sun sign was, because I forgot.
That should just be your normal horoscope, my dear.
Oh, that's your normal thing?
Yeah, mine's Virgo.
Okay. So there's this really cool site if you guys want to do it. It's called astrology.com.tr, and you put in all your information and it tells you you all your stuffs. And I mean, there's a lot of ads in it, so you gotta sort through the ads. Okay, so my sun sign is Scorpio, my moon sign is Taurus, and my ascending is Sagittarius, and my MC is Virgo. So one of
Ooh.
our listeners, I would like you to put that all together for me and tell me what it says about me.
Yeah, my sun is Virgo, which we all know. My moon is Gemini. My ascendant is Scorpio. Ew.
Hey!
And Rochelle's a Scorpio too. So
My fellow
she's like,
Scorpio.
you just attract the Scorpios, don't you? Apparently, I do.
Well, it's funny. I think that like Scorpios are a little scatterbrained, I guess I would say. I mean, I definitely am. And like my best friend and my husband and you are all very like detail oriented, have plans, have lists, have it together. So I definitely surround myself with people like that. And then my best friend Leanna, her husband is me. So like basically I married the guy version of her and she married the guy version of me.
Well, it's funny because my husband's best friend is a Virgo, and then so I'm very much him and I are pretty similar. Like we like our plans, we like our spreadsheets, we like lists, and then his wife is very similar to my husband. Like they're just very like I don't know how to describe it,
Fly by the
but
seat of your pants.
exactly. So it's funny.
Yeah.
It's funny how like who you are, who you attract, and
Yes. And like
that kind of
sometimes I
stuff.
get like, you know what? I'm going to make a list. I'm going to do this. I'm going to check things off. And then I make the list and then I never look at it again.
I love my list. If I don't have a list, I don't get stuff done.
That's how my friend Leanna is. She freaking loves lists. Loves them. She's excited to make. She told me that she gets excited to make her grocery shopping list. And I was like, "You
Yeah.
are disgusting."
Yeah, I cannot just go to the grocery store and just like grab stuff. But like so I have to have a list about stuff that I need to get, and then if I see something I want, it's like, "Oh, bonus, I'll just grab that."
Yeah, I just go and grab things I want, so I end up coming back with like a lot of junk food and Cody yells at me.
Yeah, him and I sound very similar.
Yeah, I don't know how he stays married to me.
I don't.
Well, we bring the fun and keep you guys like not too like stern and stressed and like "Brr," like we lighten things up, lighten the mood.
It's true. Kyle is very like mellow and relaxed and just very patient, and you have to
Super
have a lot
laid
of
back.
patience with me.
Yes. Yeah, and that's me and my friend Leanna, her husband. We're just very like laid back, very chill. We let Leanna and Cody kind of take the lead on things. We're just kind of, we're here for the ride and wherever it takes us.
Yeah, we I think I talked about a trip that we went on a few years ago when we first started dating. Like I think we were a little bit into our relationship, but we went on like around trips. We went to different places here in Canada, like on the eastern provinces, and came back through the states. We went to like Massachusetts, New York, like all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I had it planned, like I had it planned and mapped out every step of the way. And like this is the time we're going to be leaving this place. This is the time we should arrive at the next place, and like all that kind of stuff. And
So I definitely
it was
like to plan out
stressful. We left on different
vacations,
times,
but not like to that extent. Like this day we're going to be in this city. At some point,
yeah, no,
we'll
that
be
was
here.
me. Well, I had to because we were doing it for like a week or two,
Yeah.
and I had to plan out our campsites and like when we were going to be there and stuff, and
Oh,
like
yeah, okay.
plan it ahead of time. So
Yeah.
I had to be sort of specific.
Mm-hmm. That
But
makes sense.
yeah.
Jeez. Okay, so my story, I got a lot of information, and because I kind of go in a little bit into the mean ways that they dealt with like the therapies type things a little bit. But I got so many sources. Okay, here we go. Britannica, All That's Interesting, Wikipedia,
Ooh.
Mayo Clinic, historyofmassachusetts.org, darkhauntings.wordpress.com, The Order of the Good Death, and Ghostly Activities. Okay, so Danvers State Hospital is what they call it, like more modern day term, but they used to call it Danvers Insane Asylum. It was also called Hawthorne Hill at one point because, fun fact, Judge John Hawthorne, who lived there, and he presided over
Presided.
what?
Presided?
Presided. That's the one I wanted. Yeah. Presided.
Oh, okay. This is reminding me.
Yes.
Since this is our asylum episode,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the research that I looked through, it really reminds me of our very first episode. Like the St. Elizabeth.
The one that we took off there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, it reminds me of that a lot.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
But hey, we could always do those episodes again.
We could.
Yeah.
They were good cases.
They
Or
were,
stories.
especially Ardith.
Yeah.
I liked Ardith.
All right. What is it? Oh,
Sorry, he presided.
So, fun fact, Judge John Hawthorne presided over the Salem witch trials.
I was gonna say Hawthorne sounds very familiar.
Yeah,
and I was gonna ask if it was the same guy.
Yep. So that was his house
Okay.
for a little bit. It's in Danvers, Massachusetts, and at the time, some of Salem was Danvers. It's since been its own city now, but it was part of Salem.
Okay.
So they wanted this asylum to be self-sustaining, so where they didn't need anything from the outside. And they created it like a bat. So it looks like a bat in mid-flight. Basically, there's like a big center and then two wings popping out from it is the main building. And they wanted this to get a better breeze throughout the establishment. And if you look it up, it's a beautiful building. It's one of those just, old Northeast architecture. It's really pretty.
Okay, I'm looking it up.
Okay.
Ooh.
See, it's pretty, isn't it?
Yeah, it looks like Hogwarts.
Yeah. So at its height, it was 40 buildings, and it was supposed to hold 450 patients. But as we all know, mental hospitals never stuck to how many patients they were supposed to have.
Never.
And their goal was to completely cure patients. It wasn't like to hide them away or whatever. Their goal was to cure them. And they were the leader in humane treatment. So they started off with great intentions. But they said that the hospital administration refused to use physical restraints on patients. They emphasized curing patients rather than merely hiding them away from public. And so because of this, it was a very popular asylum. For the first 22 years, they treated about 9,500 patients.
Wow.
But unfortunately, like I said, because of that good reputation, it became popular. So at one point, they had 2,000 patients in there, despite having a capacity of only 450.
Jeez.
So obviously, because of the mass amount of patients in there, they were neglected. They couldn't keep up. And a lot of them were just kind of forgotten, which is awful. And because of this, they had poor hygiene. There were reports that they were walking the halls naked. They couldn't control the population. People were escaping, and it was just basically a hot mess. They also would do electric shock therapy and use straitjackets eventually. So at first, they were against physical restraints, but then they just had so many patients they couldn't handle it. So they would use straitjackets to scare them. They would say, hey, if you don't behave, you're going to get electric shock therapy or be put in a straitjacket. And then
I don't like that.
Yeah. Basically then to be forgotten about. So I looked it up, and according to the Mayo Clinic, electroconvulsive therapy nowadays is done under general anesthesia, and small electric currents are passed through the brain, basically triggering a brief seizure. And it seems to cause changes in brain chemistry that can quickly reverse symptoms of certain mental health conditions. So I saw a lot of severe depression where nothing else is working. They may try electroshock therapy nowadays, but it's obviously way more humane and way more controlled than it was back then.
That's still crazy though. That just seems like a really severe type of treatment even for today.
Yeah, and I started looking into it a little bit more just to learn for myself, and I'm not condoning it either way because I don't know enough about it, but everything I was reading said that it has really good results in helping
Yeah, and
people.
didn't she used to work at a hospital, and they used to do
So I worked at
that stuff?
a home for elderly women with bipolar and schizophrenia. And they had one patient there that did go through electric shock therapy. She I didn't know her very well. She was quieter, but like you could tell when it came about time to get her therapy, she would start getting a bit more aggressive, and then she would get the therapy and she would calm back down. So I don't know if hers was necessarily for depression or if it was for like aggression issues with her schizophrenia. I'm not really sure. It was years ago.
Yeah.
But
That's still cool though. Like, I mean, it's good that they're doing it more humanely
yeah,
now,
they
but
actually put him under anesthesia now.
yeah.
But at the time, obviously, they didn't put them under for it. And sometimes they would use electroshock therapy to kind of put them in a catatonic state before they performed a lobotomy on them. So
Ew.
poor things would have to go through electric shock therapy and then get a lobotomy.
Ugh. It's like two birds with one
Yeah.
stone.
So 1939 is when this hospital started doing lobotomies, and they actually call it the birthplace of the prefrontal lobotomy, which is what drew me to this asylum, because this is where they really kind of perfected the prefrontal lobotomy, was at this insane
Oh,
asylum.
what a great title to
Exactly.
have.
So yeah, so they used it a lot in this hospital again because this is kind of where they were perfecting it. So unfortunately, a lot of them would have lobotomies done on them, and then they'd just kind of be left to their own devices. So
What?
they would just be like, kind of, again, after you get a lobotomy, you're kind of zombie like, and so they would
Well, yeah,
just
you just had a hole drilled into your
right,
brain.
and so they would just kind of like stare at walls and walk around in their rooms, and they just kind of forgot about them. It was
Jeez.
bad. Yeah. So at this point in 1939, the hospital swelled to 2,360 patients.
Aw,
He's
you
chatting.
sound so cute.
He's chatting. And in that year alone, a total of 278 people died.
Whoa.
So, quick about, I guess, I went down a little rabbit hole about lobotomies. So, this really grossed me out, and I had to put it in here. Apparently, lobotomies started by drilling 2 holes into the patient's head and then injecting pure ethyl alcohol into the prefrontal cortex.
Yeah, I told you this in the St. Elizabeth's episode.
Oh, I guess I forgot. Because that grossed me
That's
out. I was
okay.
like, oh, shit.
It's gone now. Yeah, because the guy at the St. Elizabeth's Hospital was the one I think that like created the lobotomy.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So obviously this was not something that was able to be used widely because not a lot of insane asylums had surgery rooms or surgeons for that matter. And so they wanted something that was more accessible to all, because that's what you want in a lobotomy. So
Yeah.
that's when they decided to go through the eye socket with their ice pick type instrument
Yep.
and sever the connection to the prefrontal cortex.
Mm-hmm.
So it said such lobotomized patients exhibited reduced tension or agitation, but they also showed other effects such as apathy, passivity, lack of initiative, poor ability to concentrate, and generally decreased depth and intensity of their emotions or response to life. And some did die as a result of the procedure. So again, they just kind of became zombie-like, like they just didn't care about anything anymore. So we keep referencing this episode, and if you haven't heard it, it's because we took it off the air because it was our very first episode and it was real bad. But
real bad. And we recorded it twice.
yes, we had to record it twice because the first time the audio was so bad you couldn't listen to it. So we recorded it again, and it's just not great. And so we were afraid that we were losing listeners because they'd listen to the first episode and be like, "Oh, this is bad." So we just took it off. So we might redo those stories at some point. Well, and
Mhm.
this surprised. Well, I mean, it didn't really surprise me because of the time back then, but 60% of lobotomies at this time were performed on women,
Yeah.
which makes sense for the time because anytime a woman was like anything other than societal's norm, she was deemed insane.
I think it was done on John F. Kennedy's sister.
Yes. Yep, it was.
Mhm. Okay.
And here's a little Canadian fact.
Ooh, okay.
74% of the lobotomies in Ontario that were conducted between 1948 and 1952 were performed on women.
Uh-huh.
And like I said, reportedly, after they had the lobotomy at this hospital, they would just wander the halls aimlessly, stare at walls. They were kind of held there against their will. Once they had a lobotomy, they wouldn't let them leave most of the time. So,
That's crazy.
yeah. And if it didn't work,
Like,
if it didn't pacify them, then they were placed in straitjackets and just kind of forgotten about, like I said. Yeah. Can you imagine being
that's
stuck in a
horrible. Like,
straitjacket?
no, or just like so zombied out that you don't even know who you are, and you're just like wandering and staring at
Yeah.
things creepily.
Yeah. And because this place was so overcrowded and they didn't have the staff for it, patients sometimes died out of the sight of the staff, and their body would just lay there and decompose for days before someone noticed they were gone.
I'm eating ice cream, Ashley.
Oh, I got a real gross story for you
Disgusting.
later then.
Okay.
Oh.
So gross.
Yeah. Report on the asylum stated that more than 10% of the asylum's population had died in there.
How much?
10%.
Wow.
Yeah. So in the 1960s, the hospital kind of became obsolete because of medications that were coming out to better deal with mental illness and just people kind of starting to recognize mental illness a little bit more. And so they didn't get as much funding from the government, but they didn't shut down. They just stopped getting funding. So everything got really bad, and even the building started to deteriorate. In 1970, the building literally started to crumble, and the steeple had to be removed because it was so bad.
Wow.
And then they started closing down the hospital ward by ward, and they were sent elsewhere. But in 1987, a woman wandered off the property and died of a heart attack 200 yards away.
What?
And another woman was raped by a male patient in the women's restroom because there was no funding, there was no like hardly any staff, and so it's basically just like a free for all, right?
That's terrifying.
Yeah. So 770 patients throughout the course of this hospital died there. And
Wow.
they were buried near it. They found a gravesite for it with their headstones being only numbers. Like they didn't put their names on the headstones.
That's terrible. Like, honestly, like, you live such a shitty life in a
Yep.
stupid mental hospital, and then you don't even get a gravestone with your name on it.
Right? And fun fact,
Makes me angry.
this hospital was actually the inspiration for Arkham Asylum from Batman, where Joker comes from.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So now it is apartments. So they tore a bunch of it down. They like redid the steeple and they kept like one wing, I think, and they created apartments. So now they're luxury apartments,
Wow.
which I'm sure are super haunted.
Oh, probably. Like, oh, yeah, imagine.
Yeah.
Living in, like, Massachusetts and living in haunted apartments.
In like what used to be Salem, like
Yeah. And the judge's house, like Judge Hawthorne's house.
Yeah. So I found this interview that they did with this guy that worked there. His name was Preston, and he worked there in 1968. So really after like the majority of the really bad stuff. But I thought this was interesting, so I had to add it. They asked him what was the worst incident you witnessed involving a patient. And he said back when they started dual diagnosis, they transferred this 15-year-old boy from another hospital to Danvers. The boy had a habit of crawling into heat ducts. And in the hospital he was in, those heat ducts don't go anywhere. It's a newer building and you can't get hurt. Anyway, they sent him here. He was here for about 3 weeks and then they disappeared. he disappeared. They searched everywhere for him. They could not find him. And then they noticed a horrible smell.
Ew, I knew that was coming. I still didn't
Yeah.
appreciate it.
And it got worse every day. And so finally they got inside the ductwork and they found the boy. So what they think happened is he got into them and slid down and then couldn't get up.
Ugh.
His feet landed right on the heating coils and literally burnt off up to his shins.
What?
They had to go over there to help cut him out of the wall. He said there must have been 25 people in the room that day. The medical examiner, the pathologist reached in to take him out and his hands sunk into his chest like jello. The smell was disgusting. It was a nasty stench and we all got sick. His death brought on a major state investigation. His parents were mad as hell, and rightly so. He had bigwigs from Boston and the state police lab up here for weeks. It was just a horrible experience. Worst I've seen in my 24 years. So that was a gross story. But I did want to look up some of the hauntings that happened at this asylum because it is known for one of America's most haunted asylums. Unfortunately, there's not a lot about it because it was shut down. And they said over 120 ghost hunters had tried to enter the building but failed because it was closed to the public and routinely patrolled by police. So the police would stop them and kick them out. And this was obviously before it was demolished and turned into apartments. People that could get in said that there were flickering lights, full-body apparitions, hearing invisible footsteps, and doors opening and shutting on their own. And the Rhode Island Paranormal Research Group did an investigation. One night, they were able to get in, and they actually completed an investigation, but they've never released any evidence of that night, nor have they spoken about it.
Jeez.
One lady who grew up there, her name was Geraldine Lavasseur. She grew up on the grounds. Her dad was a hospital administrator, and she recalls apparitions angrily scowling at her and her sister when she was a child. Once in high school, her bed covers were yanked off her in the middle of the night. She explained the experiences as a function of the changing nature of psychiatric health. If you think back to the beginnings of medical science and the things done to people, she told the newspaper in 2003, not because they thought they were doing bad, but because they were trying to do it right. You have to wonder, did people think they were being tortured?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is my Danvers Asylum. It was a little short. Like I said, there wasn't a ton of information, especially on the ghost side, because they had shut it down to the public. But it sounded like the gateway to hell. Awful.
Yeah, no, that sounds pretty shitty.
Yeah.
I think that it's extra creepy because it is it used to be Salem.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, that judge used to live there and he was a douchebag on wheels.
Yeah.
He was a horrible man.
Yeah, so I mean, they think that that's part of the reason why it's one of the most haunted asylums, not only because of all the horrible things that happened to people there and how they were forgotten and died alone and, buried as numbers, but also because it was right there in Salem. And so, there was probably some nefarious entities floating around there anyway and probably targeted at John Hawthorne as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Oh, yeah, I hate that man.
Yeah, not great. And so, kind of a segue, a segue, if you will. The reason why we did the asylum episode is to segue into next week's episode, which is going to be featuring one of our good listeners. So, Jessica, I'll let you explain that a little bit more.
So, you've heard us mention her multiple times, and we also mentioned her earlier in the episode. Her name's Rochelle. She works for Haunted Walks, as I've explained before, which is a really it's a really cool Canadian business here where they do haunted walking tours in Kingston, Ontario, Toronto, Ontario, and Ottawa as well. And they have a podcast. It's called Haunted Talks. It's hosted by Jim Dean. If you guys like what we're all about, go listen to it because it's really cool. His stuff is really awesome. So I want to promote that as much as possible. But anyways, Rochelle works for Haunted Walks, so she's a tour guide. So she knows a lot of the haunted stories and stuff. So she's coming on our podcast next week.
Yay!
Yeah,
We're so
she's
excited.
been graciously allowed to come on by her bosses, which I'm so thankful for. She's gonna come on and tell some spooky stories from Ontario, and I'm really excited. And we have some other cool stuff coming your way, hopefully by next week, that we're planning. So we mentioned last week that we have some really cool stuff coming, and it's still coming. We're just waiting on the final details.
Yes, we're very excited and very thankful since we are such a small podcast.
Yeah.
Very thankful that we've had this opportunity and this partnership with Haunted Walks. I also
Yeah.
want to point out really quick that I definitely know that the pronunciation of it is segue. I was just kidding. So for any of you out there, I'm not that dumb.
You said segue at the beginning.
I did. I just wanted to make sure that people knew that I didn't think it was pronounced segue or segue.
Segue. I like that pronunciation. And let me just say that you said buried, and I think it's buried.
Every time I edit the episode and I hear you say that word, I giggle.
Yeah,
and
you
then
said buried.
they were buried.
It's the correct pronunciation.
No, Jessica, it's buried.
Well, you know what? I have a very intricate palate and speaking voice.
And I don't know if you noticed, but when last week's episode, I don't think I made it very clear. When I told one of the jokes, I said sorry because I was mocking your accent because I actually say sorry. But I don't think that came off and I didn't mention it.
No, it didn't.
Because I think the joke was like, why did the Canadian cross the road to tell the other person? And I said sorry, like joking about your accent. But yes, I say
No.
sorry.
I didn't know I had an accent.
You just in some words. And
Yeah.
you don't say a as much as I think a Canadian is supposed to.
No, I say it a lot when I'm texting. Or
Oh, gotcha.
like I've written it a ton when I message you, but
Yeah, I always feel like because I brought it up, you do it ironically.
no, I did it in last week's episode ironically, and you didn't even catch it. So
Because I just assume you should be saying it more. So
sorry.
sorry. I'm gonna go bury the body. Sorry, eh? Do I sound like I'm from Canada?
Yeah, you sound like a true Canadian, eh?
I mean, I am from Michigan, so we're pretty far up there, but
Okay. I'm going to be talking about Rockwood Asylum and my wonderful friend. So Rochelle and I have become good friends now, which is just wonderful.
That's
I'm super
amazing.
excited when like COVID is like lifted and we have our vaccines and her and I can meet up with each other.
I'm getting my first vaccine shot on Friday. Woo woo.
I just want my vaccine. I want my life to go on like normal again.
Well, and I've heard that Canada is like, people are really mad about how slow the rollout of the vaccine is for you guys.
Yeah, it's so fucking slow. And like, it's just dumb. And they're going by like ages and stuff and like high risk people. And it's like, you know what? I am technically high risk because of my heart disease.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, I'm totally medically cleared and I have nothing to worry about, but like, they don't need to know that.
Well, we were doing
Give
it
it
that
to
way,
me.
and then just like 4 or 5 days ago they opened it up to everybody, but all the appointments have been booked. And one night at like 12 o'clock I couldn't sleep, and I just for the hell of it was looking up appointments, and I was able to snag one. And the next day I told my friend about it and they were all gone. So I just
Oh,
like
jeez.
lucked out getting this appointment, so I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I'm jealous.
It's the 2
Alright.
shot, so I'll have to go back for another one, but that's okay.
Anyways, so Rochelle and I, we can't wait for COVID to be lifted so we can hang out, use a Ouija board together in a
Oh, God.
cemetery,
Oh
and
God.
go on some haunted tours.
Well, when you use the Ouija board in this, we should do like a, you should video it and we should do it as like a bonus for our listeners.
Ooh, I'm down for that.
And then I'll watch it from afar in safety.
I'm going to say his name for you, just
Oh, God. That's fine.
Mr. Zozo.
Oh, God.
Zozo?
Yeah, that's scary, guy.
Zozo?
Don't say it that many times.
You scared?
I am in a closet by myself. Well, I guess I have my baby. My baby will protect me.
Remember that nightmare I had about him?
Yes.
And I woke up, like, terrified.
Mm-hmm. That's what you get.
That was scary. Okay, anyways, I'm
Yes.
getting so off topic. But anyway, so Rochelle is amazing. I love her. And she she did my research this week.
Yay, thanks, Rochelle.
I feel
Which is
so
perfect because you
lazy.
said your mom. Am I allowed to say that your mom's coming?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know if you guys were still.
Yeah. No. We go back into lockdown on Saturday.
Oh gosh, you guys are going back into lockdown?
Yeah, I think it's a provincial lockdown this time.
Oh, see, we opened
So-
everything because we're complete and utter morons. So
Well, we are too, because I saw. Okay, let me see if I can find it again, because it made me giggle, because it's like totally. It's yeah, okay. So we're going into what is called gray zone. Okay.
okay.
So it says Ontario reclassifies gray zone to, I don't know, you fucking figure it out zone. Because it's like, well, you can do this, but you can't do this. Well, you can do that, but you can't do that. So it's basically like you can't see your family members outside of your house, but the kids can still go back to school. And, restaurants have to close down and only do takeout, but, retail can still be open at 25% capacity. Like, it's just really fucking stupid and really fucking confusing.
That's weird.
So, yeah, no. Anyways, I was really lucky, and I'm very grateful that Rochelle did my research this week.
Yay!
Okay, in my defense, though, I did do my own research this week for a completely different episode that I'm going to be doing in 2 weeks. So
Yeah, so we decided to do the Asylum episode because Rochelle sent that research over. So it's a really nice segue into next week when she comes on the show.
Exactly. So, but I'm just saying I wasn't lazy. I did do my research.
So I would
Just
have been
not on
lazy
this.
because I did my research this morning. So I would have been like, oh, cool. I'm not doing research. Bye.
Yeah. All right. So this is a Rockwood Asylum. It's in Kingston, Ontario. So it all began at Kingston Penitentiary.
Ooh.
Yeah. So it was the C07 building, and it was originally the West Shop block, and it was converted into accommodation for the criminally insane.
Ooh.
And this was like the criminally insane inmates. Sorry. And this was circa 1877.
Oh, okay.
Super early. So the inmates would be isolated and punished here. So shitty for them. Oh, I had notes on this.
And I have to remember now that we're talking about criminally insane, so they all did probably pretty horrible things, and they're not just like innocent mental health patients. I mean, unless they did the horrible things because they had mental problems.
Potentially. So they were, inmates at the Kingston Penitentiary. And this was the criteria that an inmate needed to meet in order to be transferred to Rockwood.
Okay.
So, number 1, the convicts in the penitentiary becoming insane while under sentence there.
Oh.
So, I guess while they were there for their crimes, they then became criminally insane.
Oh.
Or
okay.
they then became insane, I guess. So then that would be criteria to be moved. Number 2, certain classes of lunatics committed to jail as lunatics dangerous to be at large.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically they were very mentally crazy, I guess.
Gotcha.
And that's why they committed the crimes, or they were so mentally decrepit that's why they had to be sent to jail, because they were dangerous to the public.
Well, and I feel like I know there's a difference between insane and criminally insane. But I feel like everybody who murders someone is a little insane, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
like especially
yeah.
like you look at Jeffrey Dahmer, like he had a screw loose, right?
Oh, for sure.
But he wasn't considered, criminally insane. Speaking of which, totally off
Are you
topic
gonna talk
again.
about the Evan Peters one?
Oh, I'm so excited. I mean, I'm not excited to see him as Jeffrey Dahmer because ew.
Yeah.
But I friggin' love Evan Peters.
He'll do a good job.
He will. I would
Yeah.
leave my husband for Evan Peters. Sorry, Cody. I love him. He's so like, everything he does is like dark and twisty. So he's
Yeah.
into that shit. So
Yeah.
he's super cool. Like us.
Real good in bed.
Yeah, the weird ones always are.
So that's your hall pass?
Yeah, him and I don't know. I gotta think. We should next week. I want to know what your hall pass is, and I'll tell you mine.
Oh, I was just gonna tell you mine.
Oh, you got it already. What's yours?
Oh, it's Brendan Fraser.
Oh yeah, for sure.
100%.
Well, and Cody loves Sarah Paulson, so like American Horror Story, we both really like because they're both in that.
Yeah.
And I always like
Yeah,
your
no.
girl's on. He's like your boy's on.
I know. I like 100% is Brendan Fraser. I love him.
Yeah.
Then and now, it's not just his mummy days. He's just
he was hot in his mummy days.
Oh, he was like, whenever it's on TV, Kyle puts it on for me because he's like, I know you like it too much.
I'm also a big fan of Ryan Gosling. I've been a fan of his since he was in Young Hercules.
Ew.
He was like my first crush, like first celebrity crush was him in Young Hercules.
That's so funny. No, I just definitely Brendan Fraser.
Yeah, it's a good one.
But okay, so number 3, persons charged with some offense of which they had been acquitted on the ground that they were insane at the time such offense was committed.
Gotcha.
So
okay,
essentially mens rea, right?
Yeah.
And number 4, persons indicted for any offense and upon arraignment thereof found by a jury, especially impaneled for the purpose to be insane. I don't know what this means.
Michelle, what's that mean?
Well, this is my own notes that I found. So.
Oh, well, then you okay.
Yeah. Anyways, so sorry everybody. Just reading you what I found. Oh, that was from Freaktography.
Ooh.
They went around to the asylum illegally.
Oh.
And went inside and like took videos and pictures and stuff. It was really cool. I saw a video. It was really interesting. Okay. Anyways, so I forgot about my sources. I'm so bad this week. So Rochelle's resources were the Kingston Penitentiary tours, obviously. Museum of Healthcare. Oh, she used Freaktography too.
It's your use. You say
That's
your
cool.
use weird.
Yes.
Because you just said museum weird too.
I said museum.
I don't know. The way you said it sounded weird.
Oh. Algonquin. Oh, just kidding. She scratched that out. The Queen's University Journal and Toronto Star.
Got it.
Sorry. Okay. Oh, no. All right. So, the construction of Rockwood Insane Asylum. It began in 1859 to, again, house the criminally insane.
Mm-hmm.
And inmates quarried the limestone, and they were also made to build the jail.
Oh.
So they basically mined the material, and then they had to construct it as well.
Jeez. That's some punishment.
Exactly. But I think it was part of their sentence. So, like, at least it wasn't tacked on.
Yeah.
The Lake Ontario waterfront location was meant to have a calming effect on the patients. And
After
just
they built
FYI,
it?
yes, exactly.
After they built it, they could calm down.
Yeah, after all your hard work, look at the nice water view and just relax. Yes, exactly. So they actually still refer to the mental health inmates as patients in Corrections Canada.
Okay.
Because we're civilized.
Yeah, you're nice.
Yeah, exactly. We're nice people. So they didn't begin accepting non-criminal patients until 1868, so about 9 years later.
So they had criminal and non-criminal patients in there?
Yes,
Oh,
in
geez.
1868.
Okay.
And then in 1877, almost a decade later, when the asylum was handed over to the provincial asylum system, all of the inmates were returned to Kingston Penitentiary.
Oh, okay.
So then now it was just non-criminal patients
Gotcha.
at the asylum. Architect William Coverdale, who also designed Kingston Penitentiary, his designs were quite progressive at the time. Okay,
I think
so
he designed the one I just talked about too.
oh, cool, William Coverdale. That's a
Yeah,
very
don't
cool
quote
name.
me on that, but the Kingston name sounds familiar.
All right. So the large limestone building featured big rooms with windows overlooking the lake and common sitting rooms, which were quite uncommon at the time.
Hmm.
And Rockwood is credited with having one of Canada's first central heating systems,
Oh, okay.
which is very cool. And when I was on the Freaktography website, they had, like I said, they had a video of the insane asylum,
Mhm.
and every single room had like a big dome window.
Oh, wow.
Like it was really cool. Like they all had large windows in
I'm
their
just
rooms.
like, I'm still thinking about those criminals. So, like, they had to build it, they had to mine the stuff, they had to build it, and then they got kicked out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Oh well, sucks to be them.
Sucks to suck.
Don't commit crimes, people.
I mean, that would be a really good crime deterrent, right? Like, if you
Yeah.
commit a crime, you have to quarry, build a building, and then you get kicked out of it.
Yeah. I honestly like hear that so often though in regards to different like asylums and stuff where inmates had to build it.
It's awful.
Yeah. But, oh well, sucks to suck, like you said. So the early days / years is the title,
Ooh.
and it's beautifully underlined in blue. In the late 19th century, there was a major shift in the asylum system. Asylums replaced the jails, which is spelled GAOLS, and
GAOLS. Oh, okay.
yeah, which was the old way of spelling jail.
Hmm.
Yes. And it slowly evolved into genuine treatment facilities, so they basically became full-formed hospitals for study and treatment,
Oh, okay.
which is wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Medical superintendents Dr. William Metcalf and Dr. Charles Clark based their treatment plans off of prolific off of prolific.
Psychiatry.
You never know. That word can be like 5 different words. All right, so these men based their treatment plans off of prolific psychiatrist Dr. Workman of the Toronto Provincial Asylum.
Hmm.
I did it.
Good job.
Thanks. I struggled. All right. So, Dr. Workman was notable for his therapeutic approach to psychiatry. Therapeutic compared to Victorian psychiatry, which is still pretty fucked up. So basically, I'm assuming Victorian is kind of like the lobotomies and the electroshock therapy and shit like that.
Yeah, awful things.
So there were improvements to their living conditions. So like Danvers,
Mhm.
Rockwood was its own self-sufficient community. So all staff and patients lived and worked there.
Oh, the staff lived there too?
Yeah.
Ew, no thank you.
Yeah, so everybody lived there.
Ew.
This isolated model was thought to create a protective environment for the patients, kind of like a sanctuary away from the world. This also helped keep the inmates away from the public back in the early years. So physical restraints. In 1878, patients were confined inside with 10% locked into personal restraints.
Mm.
Dr. Metcalf was the first to remove most restraints, and this resulted in less excitement, fewer injuries, less property destruction, and much more peaceful wards.
Yeah, I bet. I would not want to be restrained. I'd be pretty pissed off.
Yeah, so the treatment also involved blistering, leeching, enemas, and bloodletting.
They love that
Which is
bloodletting.
Yeah. And it has been reported that during this period, physicians may have performed some of the first neurosurgical procedures, lobotomies,
Mm-hmm.
on patients at Rockwood using trephines to drill into patients' skulls. Yeah, super gross. Dr. M, so Dr. Metcalf, also eliminated canvas clothing, which he used to identify those classified as lunatics. And those canvas clothings literally used to have lunatics spelled across them in big letters.
Oh, well, that's gotta be bad for your self-esteem.
Yeah, exactly. It's horrible. In 1893, Beech Grove Complex was built as the infirmary for patients with acute diseases and convalescent patients. So outfitted with painted rooms, which is really cool because during the little tour I saw on the Freaktography website,
Mm-hmm.
they had they showed the different rooms like in the different cells and stuff, and they were like pink, green, blue, and they're like very vibrant colors.
Oh,
So
that's cool. The only
it
pictures
was
I
pretty
saw of
interesting.
Danvers were like abandoned and real creepy.
Yeah, oh yeah, no, this is abandoned since 2000, so but it was pretty creepy, but it was like in the daytime, so it was cool to see.
Yeah.
So they also had improved bedding and the sitting rooms with gorgeous furniture and decor. Many cottages were constructed on site, so some patients, depending on their classification,
Mhm.
could live in a more homey environment.
Cute.
Yes. So this just very much reminds me of St. Elizabeth's, where they wanted it to be like a nice
Yeah.
sanctuary away from everybody and
Yeah.
a nice comfortable space.
Well, and it seems like a lot of them started out that way with the best
Yes.
intentions, and then they just got too
Exactly.
overpopulated and it just all went
Yeah.
downhill.
Exactly. It's so sad because it's
Yeah.
like you said, good intentions die hard. Dr. Metcalf also gave patients ceramic plates and cutlery, which replaced the tin cups and spoons. Menus also had more choices. And by 1892, the asylum bought the nearby Newcourt farm and began producing its own. Oh, sorry, they bought it. They bought the farm. They didn't bring it. They bought the farm. And they started producing their own food, which cut down a lot of costs.
Gotcha.
But it's really cool. Like Dr. Metcalf seems like really progressive and just like
Mhm.
very much there for the patients. Like
Yeah.
he wants to give them better things, make them feel more like people rather than just like patients, right? He
Mm-hmm.
took their restraints off. He gave them better clothing, different like utensils. They gave them ceramic stuff, right? It's like I'm assuming that they gave them the tin cups and whatever so they didn't break them, but give them stuff to make them feel more like people.
Humans, yeah.
Yeah, so he seems like a really cool dude. I like
Mhm.
him. Worship was also very regular for patients and staff, but there were only services for the Roman Catholics and the Protestants.
Wow.
School for female patients opened in the late 1880s, and many would have been illiterate doctor clerks. Oh, bleh. And many would have been illiterate. Period. Dr. Clark said, schools are now recognized as a necessity in the modern asylum. What?
Illiterate Dr. Clarks.
But this is hard. I'm reading it on my phone, okay? This is new for me. Okay. So anyways, education for women. Yes. Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
In the early years, the goal really was to just calm the patients. Unfortunately, though, as I said previously, excited patients were bled, while chloral hydrate was the preferred pacifier drug, and also lots of alcohol. Thank you.
I mean, that's not that bad, right?
Yeah, but it was basically just like, don't let them be human.
Yeah.
Let's just sedate them as best as possible.
Yeah.
So changing approaches. Even without restraints, patients would still be controlled. The newly invented hypodermic needle made it easy to sedate patients with morphine. Thanks, Rochelle. Bromides,
Mm-hmm.
chloral hydrate, paraldehyde, paraldehyde. I have no fucking clue. Thanks, girl. Um, sulfonol and barbitol.
So I know what bromides are and barbitol. That's the only ones I knew.
Yeah. So thanks, Rochelle. I love it. Thanks. I love being able to not pronounce words. I hope I did it justice. Anyways, so Victorian psychiatrists also really loved chastity and anti-masturbation restraints.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Thank you. So I'm cured. Now what? In the 1890s, Dr. Clark began advocating a system of aftercare for patients being discharged, which is so nice. Because
Yeah.
I hate it when they just get released into the wild and it's like, peace, see ya, good the fuck luck.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. 100%.
I'm really glad. I'm really happy that he like made a system to try and help them out.
Yeah, for sure.
It was very nice of him. So why is Rockwood so creepy? There was horrible medical practices, like the head drilling. Yuck.
Yuck.
It closed in the early 2000s due to continuing controversial practices, and it has sat abandoned ever since.
Wait. They still had controversial practices in the early 2000s?
I guess.
That's insane. Sorry,
I
continue.
guess so. Wow, no, I think it's because they're still head drilling.
Ugh.
Yeah. Jennifer McKendry, who's an architectural historian, she said, quote, "It is a difficult building because it was planned to treat the mentally ill. The layout isn't great for modern use. Inside, it is very institutional in the worst sense of the word. Intimidating and conforming. Period."
Mm.
And it really is, like, when you like ever like the halls are just like little cells, like side by side by side by side by side, and like across the hall there's just cell by cell by cell by cell. Like it's just,
Yeah.
it's very much, it looks like a jail on the inside without the bars on the doors, I guess.
Well, I mean, that's what its original intention was, right? To be
Yeah.
housed the criminally insane.
So it just wasn't meant for modern use.
Yeah.
So is it haunted,
Ooh.
Ashley? Obviously it is, because the most well-known ghost is that of a doctor who was unfortunately murdered by his patient.
Ooh.
Many people try to break in. So fun fact, folk singer Simone Schmidt wrote and recorded the album Audible Songs from Rockwood. Oh, that's creepy. So she used archived case files on the asylum's female patients who lived, oh, whose lives were ruined and whose stories were lost in time,
Oh.
to give them their voices back and finally tell their stories.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's so sweet. Okay, this is the cool part. So she sent me excerpts from the Haunted Walks book. They have a book, guys.
Ooh.
So some of this is gonna kind of be similar to what I already said, but there's a couple of like spooky stuff, some spooky stuff in here.
Okay.
So the most disturbing hospital haunting we have heard of to date involves the complex formerly known as the Kingston Psychiatric Hospital. The hospital's roots go back to 1856, when the provincial government bought a 40-acre private estate at the location known as Rockwood Villa and converted it into an institution called the Rockwood Insane Asylum. This original building, now known as Penrose, is an impressive 2-story limestone building with 4 large stone columns at its entryway. The building, with its 2 modern additions, is still in use today and has been the site of a number of unexplained encounters.
Mm.
Rockwood was the first separate institution for the criminally insane in Ontario, and indeed the first patients admitted when the facility opened in 1865 were criminals transferred from Kingston Penitentiary just down the road. It very quickly became apparent, however, that they would also need to open their doors to non-criminal patients. The nearest facility for those patients was in Toronto, and to avoid the expense and bother of traveling, many families had resorted to having a relative named a dangerous criminal and sent to jail, whether the person had committed a crime or not, simply so that they
Jeez.
would be admitted to Rockwood. It's terrible.
That is awful.
Like, holy shit. Psychiatric care has come a long way since the early days of Rockwood, when patients were confined to windowless cells and often bound in shackles or muffs, which held the two hands together in one boxing glove-like device.
Ooh.
Around the turn of the century, one common treatment was the continuous bath therapy for excitable patients, wherein patients would be immersed in water with only their heads poking through a canvas cover for up to 12 hours at a time.
Ooh.
Horrible. Staff at the current institution have reported feeling an overwhelming sense of despair and fear in the basement, as though they were being smothered by a heavy blanket of negative emotions. This is not too much of a surprise, because this basement area was once used to house the most difficult patients at the asylum.
Mm.
Patients were sometimes left locked in chains for hours at a time. The fittings or manacles can still be found on the basement walls.
Jeez.
Several years ago, one of the employees was working in the building late one night, and he walked down the hall, rounded a corner, and saw a woman holding the hand of a child standing at the top of the stairs in the main entryway. They were wearing what the man described as period costume, and he somehow had a very distinct feeling that they were not living people.
Oof.
The old building was completely closed off to the public at the time, and the employee knew that the only other person in the building was his coworker, who he knew was working in the South Wing office. The only unlocked access to the building at that time was the door through the office itself, and they had not seen or heard anyone come through the doors the entire night. The employee immediately returned to the office, trembling and pale.
True.
The most common encounter takes place in the hallways of the building's upper floors. According to staff, a stately-looking gentleman dressed in 19th century clothing has been seen patrolling the halls and checking in on patients. Many believe he fits the description of Dr. William Metcalf, one of the early reformers of the institution.
Oh, but he's the one we like, right?
Yes, we love Dr. Metcalf.
Yeah.
He was the man who was responsible for abolishing the use of restraints on patients. Under his tenure, Rockwood became a leader in the compassionate care of patients suffering from mental illness. This made me sad when I read it. Tragically, Dr. Metcalf was murdered in 1885
Aww.
at the age of 38
Oh, he was so young.
when patrolling the halls of the building.
Oh.
He was attacked and killed by a patient who was being transferred from Kingston Penitentiary, a man Dr. Metcalf had earlier refused to keep locked up. The man got loose from his guards and stabbed the doctor with two concealed knives that had been bound together. Some believe that the spirit of Dr. Metcalf has continued to look out for the interests of his patients at the old building ever since.
Aw.
Yeah. And that is my story.
I love it. Thanks, Rochelle.
Thanks, Rochelle. We loved it. I hope I did a good job.
That was so good. You did a great job.
Words escape me sometimes.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, so thanks to Rochelle, who, like we said, will be coming on next week's episode to talk about all things paranormal, creepy, haunty, ghost walk.
Yay, I'm so excited.
Me too. And I've been on several ghost walks here in America, so maybe I can chime in with a couple things too.
Yeah.
Let's see, where did I do them? I did one in DC. I did a couple in Charleston. I did several in Charleston. I love them. They're so fun.
They are really fun.
Well, if you want more of us lovely ladies, you can find us on our website at historiesandmysteriespodcast.godaddysite.com. There's a link to all of our social media there. You can give us website suggestions. You can give us story suggestions. And anything else you would like to suggest to us. And if you guys have a couple minutes, we would really appreciate if you could review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to our podcast. The reviews really help to get us out there a little bit more, and we would love to grow our audience. So we would really appreciate that.
Thanks, everybody. We hope you enjoyed.
Yeah, have a great week.
Bye.
Bye.